All right, hello to everyone. And we are covering HSB, Human and Social Biology. We'll be going over the January 2017 paper. We'll be doing this in two parts. This exam has 6 questions. So this part will cover questions 1 to 3. And then the next part 2, will be covering questions 4 to 6. So let's get going one time. Question 1. Table 1 shows data on problems associated with persons who abuse drugs. So let's see what the table is showing us. Now, as I always tell my students, whenever you are faced with a table, diagram, graph, you name it, anything that has as decent amount of information presented that's not text, that you should take the time to analyze it first, go through it, make sure you understand what's in front of you before you jump to the questions. So problems associated with persons who abuse drugs, right? And the drugs in question are alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana. Now, if this were going on a graph, percentage users, these would be going on the y-axis, all right? And on the leftmost column, you basically have the problems. I didn't label it, but basically that's what it is. This column is the problems. And we have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 problems. We have issues with family and friends, missed classes, in trouble with the law, been in fights, done something illegal, right? Given the missed classes, we can consider that this may include persons who are school age, right? School age included, right? So just make a little note to yourself. Okay, maybe this included. They didn't say, but it could be, right? So let's take a look at the numbers. Now, again, whenever you have a list of numbers in a table, in a list, etc., with respect to some other piece of data, you should, again, analyze it. And the kinds of things you're looking for is maximum, minimum, if there's a peak, etc. Now, in this case, it isn't a trend. It isn't the kind of data that gives you like a trend. For example, enzyme activity with respect to temperature, as temperature changes, enzyme activity changes. This is just literally just basically, it is just giving you, these are the problems, these are the percentages for each problem. So this kind of data would definitely lend itself to a bar chart. So if you're being asked to draw a graph, we don't know yet, but if you're asked to draw a graph, the bar chart would be the best choice. Yeah? So let's take a look at the percentages here. So we're going to take it by problem. All right, so we're going to compare across the types of drugs. So we have issues with family and friends. We can see this one is the max, right? For issues with family and friends. We can see that alcohol is the max for missed classes, right? Although this is a close second, but really close, right? And then we have in trouble with the law. This one is the max. Been in fights. This one is also the max. Illegal to obtain drugs, also the max. Right? Now, of course, this is covering alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana. So there's no cocaine, all the heavy duty guys, cocaine, heroin, etc., is not included. So of these three, this is the one that stands out. So you can see that of these three drugs, marijuana seems to be the one causing the most problems. All right. So we'll see how that pans out with the questions. So I think we are clear about what this table is doing. So let's go to the questions. So the first question, identify the drug that has the most negative impact on the user. Well, we have it out there, plain in our face. So yes, marijuana would be the answer according to this data. Next question, which two drugs have the greatest impact on users' relationships with friends and family and academic life? So as we can see here, alcohol and tobacco, because as we chose for the two, because it's used with family and friends, you're looking at this guy and this guy, right? And what were the maxes? Tobacco and alcohol. So those are your answers there, right? 1 mark each. Next question. Another table. So again, as per usual, we are going to analyze it. Notice we didn't have to draw a graph this time, yeah? So it's one of those moments when you don't have to do a graph. So this table is showing us gender and monthly income of persons in table 1. So it's referring to the people in table 1. All right, so here we have several characteristics. We have gender, well, two, gender and monthly income. And we have the characteristics listed here. Once again, these would be in the y-axis if you were to draw a graph. This would be on your x-axis. And this would once again lend itself to a bar chart. Definitely lend itself to a bar chart. Right? So let's again analyze based on what's in front of us. So for males, male versus female, in this one, there'll be a comparison down the we'll be comparing downwards, right? But we'll compare across as well. So for males, they are their maximum is here with respect to across like that. And here it's also the max going down, right? This for males, also again, the max going down when you compare, and again, then the maximum going down, right? But across the board for males, alcohol is the highest percentage. For females, it's also the maximum across the board, right? In terms of drugs that are being used. Then we go to monthly income. So for this one, we're definitely seeing the same trend in that the maximum across the board is for alcohol. But for going down now, comparing the incomes, we can see that we have a tie for income of 800 to 16 and 1600, right? Anyway. Yeah, that's the monthly income. That had to be in US. Anyway, let's go to tobacco. Highest is, let me see, max here, maximum here, this one, and maximum here is also this one, right? And I think that's about it. Yeah. If we want to look for minimum will also be the lowest income for all. Yeah. So let's go to the questions. Which gender is most likely to engage in substance abuse? Well, we can see there, right? Males. They were the maximum for all three drugs. Yeah. Which substance is most likely to be abused by persons from all economic backgrounds? Well, as we can see, alcohol was the maximum for all three and for all incomes. So, therefore, alcohol is the answer. And which income bracket shows the highest levels of drug abuse? Across the board, more than 1600. Max, max, max. Yeah? So that's how you handle questions like this with data. And notice because I highlighted already, by the time I have to answer, I can very quickly come up with my answer. I don't have to now look and check around because that's how you end up missing things, right? So that's, this approach is best to help you get through these kinds of questions. So let's go to Part C. So there are plenty going on here, right? So let's see. Portia has been overweight for about 20 years, suggests three health problems that she could develop as a result, right? So let's see. We have lots, and this was a shortened list, okay? And any three you can answer. Then we go to the doctor tells Portia that she's suffering from malnutrition. She's like, "Ooh," right? Explain how it's possible to be overweight and suffering from malnutrition. And this is a 3-mark question. And you have some space to write. So you know you're expected to write a little bit, right? So first thing, again, as I usually tell my students, when you see the term explain, it's what we call like a higher order cognitive task. I know, fancy words. But basically what it means is that this would include like lower order, lower level tasks, like just listing something or stating. So if you see explain, it doesn't mean that you just jump into it and just start to explain. It includes, right? It includes describe, it includes define, right? If I'm breaking a rule, right? It includes list, whatever is appropriate for that question. All right. So in this case, since we're talking about malnutrition, it is appropriate to define malnutrition. Right? So the first thing you do, define malnutrition. What is it? It's unbalanced nutrition. And that means that her daily nutrient intake is either deficient, it's lower than what is required, or it exceeds the recommended values, right? So that's the definition basically, I should say, right? And then that's your first mark. Then you go into the situation itself. So Portia is overweight, right? And therefore at the most basic level in terms of define in terms of the general definition for malnutrition, she's definitely exceeding recommended energy intake, right? So whether it's via carbohydrates, fats, or fats, she is definitely exceeding the recommended values for her intake. So just by her being overweight, she's already malnourished, all right, in terms of being unbalanced. Her nutrition is unbalanced. Then the third mark is that there's another aspect to it. She can also be deficient in various vitamins and minerals because often if you have an unbalanced diet to the point of getting overweight, it's also unbalanced to the point that you're not getting enough of other nutrients like vitamins, certain minerals. Maybe your diet is deficient in fruits and vegetables and so on. So all of that could be part of her being overweight. So that third mark is basically indicating, look, her intake may be below her intake of vitamins and minerals, right? Vitamins and minerals might be below the recommended values. And so the doctor might be picking up signs. He's observing her and realizing that she is showing signs of one or more deficiency diseases, right? Maybe she's showing signs of being deficient in vitamin A or D, etc. All right. So that's your 3 marks. Right? And that is how you would approach a question like this. Yeah. Then we go to the next one. So he's advising her to eat more fruits and vegetables. So all right, that means what we said in that last part is true, right? Because if he's advising her to eat this, he's thinking about vitamins and minerals that are needed. Yeah. So we're asking, okay, what benefit would they be to her? Well, first thing again, what are fruits and vegetables a source of? They're a rich source of vitamins and minerals like vitamin B, magnesium, whatever other examples you may think about, right? And then you could give a little example of what the vitamins can do for her, right? So, example, vitamin C, you can, helps you to keep the surface tissues, the epithelial tissues healthy, right? That's one of the ways that it can help her. And you could use other examples. You could talk about the role of vitamin A, vitamin B, you name it, right? Then we say fruits and vegetables for the last of the 3 marks. You also indicate that it's a rich source of roughage, and that's going to help to maintain her colon health. Because actually, one of the health problems that she's at risk for are different types of cancers, like colon cancer. So, by eating her fruits and vegetables, that's also going to help her to reduce the risk of developing that particular health problem. Yeah, and that's your 3 marks. Yeah. So let's go to, and that's it for question one. Yay! So let's go to question two. Figure one is a concept map depicting the process of photosynthesis. Oh dear. So, what is this thing? Well, firstly, when you get a concept map like this, um, I usually suggest treat it like read it off like you know, read it off in sentences. What do we mean by that? Well, where's the starting point? So you're starting here. So you read it off. Plants have leaves that contain a green pigment called, well, we know it's chlorophyll, right? Because again, we are not looking at the question yet. We're going through the diagram. So we'll deal with that later on. So chlorophyll plus sunlight, right, is being added to, or it's picking up. I shouldn't say added to, it's picking up sunlight or traps sunlight. Let me see. Right, so chlorophyll traps sunlight. And this is with a big air quotes because, at this level we will, we'll use the different terms. But this is fine. Then we come back here and say, okay, the green pigment uses sunlight and plus something else plus something else to make food. So we know the food is the glucose from photosynthesis because they told us it's photosynthesis. So if it's photosynthesis, it means that we are looking at carbon dioxide and water, right? To make food because that's photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide, water, they they are used along with sunlight to produce glucose. And here we go, glucose in the form of food in the form of glucose. So we even wrote it down already, but let's put it in the right place. Right, so let's get rid of that. So we basically answered it. Yeah, we went through the whole thing, we completed it, it makes sense to us. Now let's look at the question. And there we go. Complete the concept map by writing the correct labels for 1, 2, 3, and 4. We already did it. So you take from your diagram, chlorophyll, 1. Carbon dioxide, well, in this case, I flip it. Water and carbon dioxide, 2 and 3. Glucose, 4. Then we go to part B, and we have another diagram now. So let's take a look at the diagram. We are being told, that it's showing us part of the carbon cycle. Yeah. And the figure 2, part of the carbon cycle. Yay. So again, let's analyze the diagram. So let's see, what do we have in this cycle? We have carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We have photosynthesis going to green plants. We have green plants to animals. We have respiration. We have death here. This would also be respiration of decomposers. This little arrow here. Because that's how the carbon dioxide gets back into the atmosphere from dead and waste matter. It's the respiration of the decomposers that's going to return carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Respiration of the animals as well. And we have oil refineries, combustion. So basically, you're looking at your fossil fuels here, right? And we get CO2 in the atmosphere. Yeah? So let's go to the questions. At what stage in the cycle does carbon dioxide enter the food chain? Well, here's the food chain. That's your food chain. And it's going to start here. So it's entering at this point, and the process is photosynthesis. So the stage is the photosynthesis stage. All right. Then the next one, at what stage are humans having a major effect? Well, we know it's the burning of the fossil fuels. So oil refineries, combustion. So that's the combustion from oil refinery stage. Yeah, straightforward. Then we have Farmer Singh. Farmer, Farmer Singh wants to improve the nitrogen content of his farmland. State 2 reasons why it is important to have adequate amounts of nitrogen. So notice it is important for plants to have adequate amounts of nitrogen. So you're looking at the role of nitrogen in the plants. So we have one, synthesized proteins, and proteins have lots of rules, right? You have cell repair, you have components of cells, we have several crucial molecules, chlorophyll. In fact, you can even go as simple as saying to make chlorophyll, because chlorophyll is a type of protein. And chlorophyll is crucial to the plant's life, yeah? So you can even state that as well. And any two of those will be your answer. The other one, synthesis of ATP. Yes, ATP has a lot of nitrogen in it, as well as your nucleic acid, your DNA, your RNA also has a lot of nitrogen in it. Okay? So you need nitrogen to make all of these biomolecules. So any two of those will do, 1 mark each. 2 types of bacteria which provide nitrogen when present in soils. Right? So we have nitrogen fixing bacteria and nitrifying bacteria. Notice present in soils. So we're not talking about the root nodule bacteria, not the bacteria you find in the nodules of legumes. All right? The ones in the soil. The nitrogen fixing bacteria, they are the ones that will convert nitrogen to NO nitrates, right? Is minus or two minus? I always mix it up. I think it's two minus. Right? Chemistry people will bang me over the head for this. Just say nitrates, please. Leave me alone. It's a charge, right? My chemistry memories kind of disappeared for a while there. And then the nitrifying bacteria are going to convert any other version of your this combination of nitrogen and oxygen, for example, nitrites, to your nitrates. Right? There you go. And yeah, so both of them are going to produce your nitrates. For those of us not doing chemistry, this is the formula for nitrates. Okay. It's an ion, yeah. So it'll be, so what you're really going to end up with are different salts like potassium nitrate and so on, right? Magnesium nitrate. Okay. So that's part two. Yeah. Let's see. Next one. Farmer Singh's garden borders a river. He's concerned that his farming activities will result in the pollution of the river. So you have to suggest pollutants that may run off from the garden into the river. Notice run off. So you're looking for any kind of pollutants that's going to actively come from the garden and that can be washed away into the river. All right, so those are the ones you want to pay attention to. And so these are any three. You have suspended solids that would have come from the soil itself, right? Some of the soil washing away into the river. You have dissolved salts, like in nitrates and phosphates, that would be coming from the artificial fertilizers that are applied to the soil. And then when the rain falls, washed into the river. Organic matter, your farmyard manure, right? That also can get washed away. Toxic chemicals, your even pesticides, my goodness. Pesticides. Your pesticides, your herbicides, right? Those also can be washed into the river, right? So all of these guys, any of these you can choose from. Yeah. So let's see. Three of them, and these are some of the impacts. He outlined two effects of the pollutants on living organisms. So any two effects of any of the pollutants that you listed, right? So anything that applies to those pollutants that you listed, you can outline them. You can even make reference to, you can refer to the pollutant that is coming from. But interestingly, for some of these effects, you're going to get these effects from more than one pollutant, right? And so the examples I gave here are eutrophication, that's going to produce excessive weed growth, and that's going to deplete the oxygen in the water. And then you have fish kills because of the oxygen depletion, that you're going to end up with these fish kills, which is basically you just see a whole lot of dead fish showing up on the shores of a river or on the beach, etc. Right? Of course, in this case, we'll be talking about a river. And again, in my model answers book, you're going to get a lot more details. In fact, I can probably show you what it would look like because there's a lot to choose from. All right. And it's a good study point as well. Yeah, so see, you have several options. And what I did is I outlined the pollutant and listed the effects for each pollutant. But you will notice that for some of them, you're going to have some repeats. Yeah, for example, fish kills can come from organic matter. It can also come from the dissolved salts, right? Toxic eutrophication from here. You can get eutrophication from here. So the nitrates, the phosphates, the manure, all of those, both of them can lead to eutrophication. Yeah. So any of these you can use in your answer. All right. So let's go back to our paper. Then we go to question 3. Last question for this video. Right? Bone is a living tissue. One of its functions is to protect the internal organs. So the first part is asking you state one function of bone, of course, other than protection of internal organs. Yeah? And these are options you have. One, manufacture of red blood cells, works with muscles to produce movement, rib cage, facilitates breathing, reserve of calcium and phosphate. And there are more, which again is listed in my listed in my book, right? Then we go to functions of the human vertebral column. That's one a little more straightforward. You're protecting your spinal column, right, of your central nervous system, and you are providing support to your body and to your head, right? It's like the central point of your body's framework, right? Then we go to table. We have a table to fill out. So we have to complete by writing the correct answers in 1, 2, and 3. And it's giving us information on bone and cartilage. So let's see what we have here. So on this side, we have features, type of feature, right? We have location, structure, and function. Let me zoom in, zoom out a little bit, yeah, so we can see everything. And we're seeing that we're basically comparing. It's like a little comparison question here. All right. CXC loves comparison. And we have location found throughout the body. So of course you're looking for the description that applies to cartilage. In this case, unlike bone, cartilage is found in a few regions of the body, such as, the ends of bones and your earlobes, right? Your earlobes is pure cartilage with some skin over it, right? That's why it's so flexible, right? Then we have structure. So in this case, we are given the information for cartilage, and we're being told, okay, cells are within a tough, flexible matrix. And then for bones, we have a bone cells are arranged in rings. Cells are within a rigid, because we want to give the opposite, show how bone is the opposite. So whereas cells have a flexible matrix, the bone has a rigid matrix, right? And that's due to the calcium salts. The embedding calcium salts into the matrix is what makes it rigid, right? And then we have protection of internal organs, spreads the load. Cartilage is going to spread the load and cushion the shock between bones, especially when it's located at the ends of bones. And it also is going to give a nice slippery surface for the bones to rub against. All right, because again, we don't want to wear our bones away too soon. They are going to wear away eventually with age, but you want to reduce that significantly, right? So that is what the cartilage helps to do. Then we go to part C. So during a football match, Chades Puyol twists his ankle, falls and injures his knee. which later becomes swollen. So Chalice is not having a good day, right? So we are being asked to identify the type of joint in the knee region and describe the movements associated with it. So we know the knee region is your hinge joint, and the type of movement you're going to get with your hinge joint is back and forth along one plane, right? So it's like it's going this way and that way, right? Back and forth. And yeah, and that's your 2 marks there. Part 2, several days later, his hip is extremely painful. Oh gosh, poor Puyol. He under pressure, right? So his hip now hurting him. So now they're going to ask us describe the difference in terms of movement between the joint at the hip region versus the joint between the bones of the skull. Right? So it's an interesting segue, but okay. So the joint at the hip region, of course, that's your ball and socket joint. All right, which will allow 360 degrees range of motion. Right? So it's giving you full, back, forth, up, down, all angles. Yeah. And the joints between the bones of the skull allow very little movement at all. At best, you have a little bit of shifting back and forth, but that's about it. All right. So basically, these are like the extremes of the joints that you have in your body. Yeah. Then we have lack of vitamin D results in bone disease in children. This disease results in bone being unable to become hard, and as a result, limbs become bent. Of course, we know that is your disease called rickets. So, where we asked, explain why vitamin D is necessary for bone formation and name the disease. Well, we named it already, right? We named it here, rickets, right? I guess they know people tend to forget, so they make sure. Name of disease. Right, so you have that listed there, and then you're going to talk about the how vitamin D helps. Now it's a 4 mark question, so given that naming rickets is literally going to be 1 mark, you want to check the other parts, right? So vitamin D, we have it's going to promote calcium absorption because the bones getting hard is going to require calcium. Remember, the calcium being deposited into that matrix is what makes the matrix hard. And it's going to regulate calcium and phosphorus levels in the body, right? So it's going to make sure that there's a balance of calcium and phosphorus. And it's going to help the bones to absorb calcium and phosphorus, right, as they're growing and repairing. So that is what's going to help the bones to remain hard. Because, and notice all three are important because I could absorb calcium in my gut, but then if I cannot deposit it into my bones, then we still have a problem. Yeah? So all three aspects of its role is important. All right? They are important. Then we have large intakes of carbonated beverages have an effect on bones, similar to that caused by vitamin D deficiency. And we are being asked to suggest which mineral is most likely being lost. And calcium is the one because it has a similar effect. So calcium is what's being lost, most likely. Yeah. And that's it for question 3. And that's it for this part of, part 1 of January 2017. So see you in the next video, part 2, where we cover questions 4 to 6.